Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please be seated. As my daughter pointed out, isn't a reflection supposed to be somber and meditative, non-religious alternative to traditional prayer? I don't seem to be very good at being somber and meditative. I'd like to talk about voting, specifically voting to name the fish on the top of the courthouse. That's not especially Rotary related, I guess, except that it's our courthouse and it's our city, and it's one of the iconic symbols. School children all over the county were asked to submit names, and they picked 6 names that are being voted on. The names are Finn with a double N, Gil with a double L, Hoagie, Bubbles, Cutter, and Goldie. Since early November, there's been a survey monkey that you could vote. You can vote daily. You can vote all the days up until closing of voting, which is November 2nd. And I hope it won't get me in more trouble for violating Rotary's nonpartisan policy. I'll tell you who I'm voting for, and that's Hoagie. It seems to me that Hoagie is being forgotten by the younger generations by this time, and the American Songbook is not even remembered among many people. And why shouldn't a fish be named Hoagie? Here are 2 tidbits about the fish. It's 5 feet 6 inches long, and some people say that it's actually upside down because its dorsal fin is on the bottom. In any case, this is a reminder to vote on November 6th. It's a citizen's duty.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Now I want to invite Hank up to introduce our guest today. Hank.
That's a tough act to follow. So we have 6 guests today. Visiting Rotarian Evan Fruits, a guest of Walter Kuhn. Cheryl and David Moeller, guests of Martha Wales. Under business or profession, it says season ticket holders for baseball. We know why you came. 2 guests of John Hobson, Jean Heminger and Jane Perry. And a guest of Katie Beck, David Davila. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Hank. I also want to make sure we give a special welcome to 2 Rotarians, but we haven't seen them in a while. We've got Wayne here with us today and also Dell with us today. So great to have you guys here today. What's that? And John Barada. I'll see him at Ryla. We're bunking up together. Also, part of the Rotary family, I want to ask Craig to come up and just do a memorialize Mr. Bob Compton. So, Craig, are you here? Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, Lauren. Robert J. Bob Compton died on the 19th of September at the age of 87. I think the last thing he told me was that he thought it might not be a very good prognostic sign to be on a first-name basis with your cardiologist. And, of course, Bob did die of end-stage coronary disease. And I'd known him since he first joined Rotary here in 2003. He left behind his wife, Mary Jane, of 57 years, had 2 children, several grandchildren, step-grandchildren, and a few great-grandchildren. He was born in Virginia, graduated from the IU School of Business in 1956, and became the founding CEO of the largest wholesale office product supplier in the United States and Canada. He was very politically and community-wise active in Terre Haute, and held true to his profoundly conservative principles until his death, the reason why was enjoyed his company so much over the years. He joined us here in Rotary, as I mentioned, in 2003, having moved to Bloomington in 1996. He was a daily fixture at the YMCA and didn't know a stranger there, I can guarantee you, and was active in the First United Methodist Church as well. Bob certainly had a sharp wit and a somewhat abject cynicism about political pundits, and we had lots of nice conversations over the years about various aspects of politics. More importantly, Bob was a huge Indiana University athletics fan. He had 40 years history of football and basketball tickets, and really had an uncanny ability to recall scores and players from the 50s on, and was pretty good about predicting upcoming encounters as well. He often mentioned the old fire truck behind the DU frat over on 3rd Street, and the Dalmatian that sat up there on the truck with his frat brothers. But he had some other good stories as well, including one related to his service in the Korean War, where he dug a different kind of fraternity house out of the frozen tundra, and lived in foxholes for days at a time, and sometimes sub-zero weather. The unrelenting frostbite that he sustained came to the point of near amputation of parts of his body, something that Bob predictably refused despite the field surgeon's insistence. But that was typical Bob Compton, decisions he stubbornly made throughout his life that contributed to his success both in business and as a community leader. I think his family and community service were probably Bob Compton's legacy, and one I think we can all be proud of as Rotarians. Why don't we stand for a moment and just have a short visit with Bob. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. Always important to recognize those members who have gone before us, so thank you for doing that, Craig. Birthdays this week, we've got Jim Capshew, was on the 14th. Jim, happy birthday, a little belated. And then David Meyer on the 18th. Is that right, Dave? All right, happy birthday. Membership anniversaries. This is my 3rd year in the Bloomington Rotary Club, which is crazy to think. It's been 3 years already. And then Walt Kuhn, 17 years. Does that sound right? 17 years of membership. So pre-program announcements. The Business Outlook is on November 1st at 12 p.m. at the Woolery Mill. Don't forget the regular Tuesday meeting on the 30th excuse me, is canceled. The Rotary Toast will be the following day, the Friday, November 2nd, honoring Steve and Connie Ferguson. And I believe, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 70 spots left before we're sold out. So those are going quickly, actually.
as we get regular updates. Continue to work towards your quarterly lunch buddies. I continue to hear people having fun stories and visits with their lunch buddy for this quarter. 12 months of service, put this on your calendar, please. For October 27th, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Wonder Lab, we'll be doing Wonder Gardening. And just to circle back on that, that was sponsored and paid for by Mike and Beverly Baker in recognition of Bev's father. So it's special. I didn't know that when we scheduled it. It just happened to work out that that was a project that came available to our club. We need at least 10 members to sign up to do that. So if you would let me know if you're available to do that on the 27th. Next, Rotary 505, just a social hour with hosted by Joy and Rick Harder at their home on the 18th, so that's coming right up. And then the Rotary Leadership Institute is on 1027 in Vinces, Indiana. Now my favorite part of the meeting, Happy Dollars, Miss Susie Graham. Happy Dollars, what do we got? Anybody? Owen Johnson.
Last week, ESPN College Game Day was in Ann Arbor, where I went to graduate school. This week, it will be in Pullman, Washington, where I was an undergraduate. They have been trying to get College Game Day there for 15 years, and they finally have it, and the whole town is really excited. I played freshman baseball for Washington State, so I'm particularly happy to be able to make this gift with the coach standing right next to me for my meeting.
All right, thanks, Owen. Yeah, Sally in the back. We're going to get a workout for Susie. Make her go across the room.
So, assuming I get over my goal, I'll be singing twice this weekend. First of all, Cardinal Stage Company is opening this fabulous weekend called The Christians, which just happens to have a church choir on stage. Eric performance, I'm not in it, performance on Saturday also. And then on Sunday, which is another connection choir is doing a program called Sanctuary. Free at the Unitarian Church at 2 p.m. And then we're driving up to the Exotic Feline Rescue Center, a sanctuary for Christians. And then doing a concert over at this castle glacier. So, spiritually looking good.
Awesome. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, Glenda. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll be looking for community partners who want media students to work on video projects for them. And the idea is that our stories, positive stories from the Bloomington community that somehow represent the ideals of Martin Luther King Jr. So if you're interested, give your business card or take mine and talk back.
Thank you, Katie.
No, Jean.
Jean.
I just want to reiterate, please come out Thursday night to Rick and Joy's house. She's cleaning house all day for us. So we want you to come out and enjoy a really good evening out for a lovely home. So please come out Thursday night. We'll have plenty of hot dogs for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, Phil.
Talking about TV, I saw something today.
Dave.
I am happy to have Wayne Martin back with us.
Rex.
This weekend, we'll have 5 of our granddaughters here in Bloomington from all over the country for our granddaughters' wedding.
Great.
Just a happy dollar last Thursday, the Bloomington
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Susie. All right, so transitioning in from my happy dollar to our speaker today, I've got a lot of things I could read. I've tried to summarize it or shorten it a little bit, but recently announced Indiana University recently announced the hiring of Jeff Mercer as the 25th head baseball coach for the Indiana Hoosiers baseball program. A native of Bargersville, Indiana, is widely regarded as one of the young top baseball coaches in the country. Mercer was named the 2018 Horizon League Coach of the Year with the Wright State Raiders. He developed 12 players he recruited into Major League Baseball draft picks since 2015. He led the Wright State to 77 wins, including 6 wins against ranked opponents in just 2 seasons as the head coach. With an appearance in the 2018 Stanford NCAA Regional and the program's first ever national ranking in 2017. In his time as head coach, 2017 and 18, and as an assistant, 14 to 16 at Wright State, he has been part of 3 Horizon League regular season and conference tournament titles, 3 NCAA appearances, and a combined record of 199 and 92. The Raiders won 4 NCAA tournament games over those 3 appearances, having reached the regional finals twice. Mercer, who was a 2-time All-Horizon League honoree in 2008 and 2009 as a player, returned to the Raiders as an assistant coach in September of 2013. Wright State set a school record for wins, 43 in 2015, and broke it again a year later with 46 wins. Mercer played 2 seasons at Dayton before transferring to Wright State, where he was a 2-time first-team Horizon League honoree as a first baseman. He was named to the Collegiate Baseball newspaper All-American 3rd Team in 2009. He was also named the Horizon League Player of the Year in 2009. Jeff earned a degree in organizational leadership from Wright State in 2009. He and his wife Stephanie had their first child, Grady, born June 20th, 2018. Jeff and I are on a similar path there. Jeff's father, Jeff Sr., served as an IU baseball assistant coach from 1988 to 1989 and helped found the noted Indiana Bulls baseball organization. This is what the media and most people think and know of Jeff Mercer. I have a little different perspective. The Jeff I think of is a Little League pitcher throwing 70 miles an hour at age, 12 or however we were. I was about 4'6" at this time, so it was pretty intimidating. He was a dominant middle school wrestler on our undefeated season in 8th grade with me. The intensity on the football field was always present, and I believe, Jeff, you broke your finger and you just kept playing, and that still is a little awkward today. He lived and grew up in the woods of Bargersville, hunting, fishing, and gigging frogs. He was a great big brother and is a great big brother, a great son with a servant's heart. And although we've fallen out of touch over the recent years, I can only imagine that he'll be an incredible coach and an even better husband and father. I'd like to welcome Coach Jeff Mercer.
That was very well done. That was very well done. That was my whole life story, right? And wrapped up and without a lot of the sidetracks. So I appreciate that. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity. I always enjoy getting a chance to come out and do these and spend time mostly with the people that care so much about the programs that you become a part of, right? At Wright State, where I transferred to, I spent a lot of time in Dayton, and so I had a pretty good feel for the community. But when you get out and you get around the people that care so much, you gotta understand you're coaching the community's children, right? These are their kids, these are their families, these are the people they care most about, and so I love being able to meet everyone who's involved. I was born and raised, like Lauren said, just up the road, and I always wanted to be a part of Indiana. I always wanted to play baseball here, or I wanted to go to school here. Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough out of high school to have a chance to do that, mostly because my football injury didn't help with that, and but I always wanted a chance to be a part of it. And so when my dad, after I graduated college, 2009, my dad had me write down, so I want you to write your career goals. I want you to write what you want to do and how you're going to go about doing it. And so I wrote them all down, and I said, I want to be a head coach by the time I'm 30 years old. And I want to be, within 5 years of being a head coach, I want to be the coach of the year in that conference, okay? And so I went through, and at 30 years old, I was named the head coach at Wright State, youngest head coach in the country. And the second year, I was named coach of the conference, right, coach of the year. And so I go back, and I'm looking back at it, and I said, I want to be, within 10 years, I want to be the head coach at Indiana University. That was my original goal. I want to be the head coach at Indiana. So I had achieved I want to be head coach by the time I'm 30. I want to be the head coach of the year. I'd done that, and you know, very, very fortunate. I was a head coach at Indiana University. I was sitting down with my dad, and I said, you know, the only goal I had left was I wanted to take Indiana to the College World Series. And I said, these things are happening so fast, I better start writing new goals, or I'm going to have to retire before I reach 35. So I don't want to, you know, I want to continue to be able to go to work every day. So we were kind of getting a laugh out of that. But in all actuality, the truth of the matter is the things that I learned from our community, from this community, things allowed me to have success. And I really enjoy being able to relate back the things that I learned, the things I grew up doing, and taking from our community to the players. And so I tell guys stories often. I tell guys stories often in my way to try to be able to prove a point. And I think that we're such creatures of communication, and we're so much more relatable as we can communicate in that sense. So we talk about our vision, right? Talk about our vision for Indiana baseball, or in the past I would talk about our vision for Wright State. And I came across a story, and I know some folks in the room, so I've told this story before, but I do think it's very applicable when we're talking about young people and how we communicate with them and how we move them in the right direction. And so I would tell a story before games. And so we were out playing, last year we were out playing in Texas, playing Sam Houston State. We had just come off of a difficult series. We had played some ranked teams and it won and played well, but it was always going to be a difficult thing. And so I love the outdoors, like Lauren said. I grew up, if I hadn't been a baseball coach, I'd probably be guiding, hunting tours in Montana or fishing somewhere. That's what I would be doing. So when I'm on the road and seeing college baseball and college athletics, you're just gone, right? You're in a hotel, you're on the road, you're in Los Angeles, or you're in Chicago or in Cincinnati all the time. So I was sitting, I'll watch like the Discovery Channel or like a Nature Channel, just kind of wishing I was back home in Bloomington. And so I was watching a show talking about elephants in Africa, right? Talking about elephants in Africa. And they're talking about how they train these massive, massive elephants. And so they walk by, and the guy is showing this, it's a 10,000-pound elephant. And it's tied by a small rope to a stake on the ground. And the guy asked, how is this elephant, how are you controlling this elephant by such a small rope? And the guy said, that's how it's trained. I said, I realize that, but how do you get him to not break free? He could easily break free of anything that you have him tied down with. He said when he's very small, they'll tie that rope to a stake, and at that point the rope's strong enough to hold the elephant. And as he gets bigger, he learns that those limits are there. Even though as he grows bigger and stronger, those limits he could easily break free of. So that this could never hold him, but in that moment it could. And so I think back to my own upbringing, and I think back to the programs I've been a part of, and as I look at Indiana and what we're capable of doing here as a baseball program, and I say this: we are bound only by our expectations. So just like a 10,000-pound elephant in its own mind is limited by a small rope, we are limited by what we can imagine ourselves accomplishing. And so when my dad sat me down and said, what do you want to do with your career and what do you want to do with your life? I said, I want to be the head coach at Indiana. And then it happens. We have to understand, to communicating to young people, that speaking or dreaming, believing these kind of things into existence and into reality is not only something that is capable or we're capable of, but ultimately it's something that we have to encourage people to be able to do. Because without those, with limitations, with internal stagnation, we keep ourselves from achieving in really any degree of high success. And so we go out there and we're traveling through Texas, and I tell the teams this story, and you can see guys begin to remove limitations and remove barriers. And I think it's so important. I think it's so important that we use our ability to be relatable and to communicate with people, and especially when it comes with our young people as such a formative time in their lives. And I always look back to that elephant tied to a rope, how it applied to our teams, how it applies to my life, and then ultimately now as we go into our program here. And I hear this all the time. I say, the people ask me, do you think you can build truly a top 10, a national power? Can you be a top 10, top 15 program at Indiana? Can you do it in the Midwest? Can you do it with some of the limitations that Big Ten has in scholarships? And can you do it with some of the limitations that Big Ten has in academics? Yes. But understand this, every successful business has a model. Every successful business has a model. If I was selling paper, if we were selling printers, if we were building cars, right? You have to have a model, and we have to have a blueprint that we follow. If not, success is the product of luck. And so you have that a lot, especially in the Midwest. You'll see programs be really good for 2 or 3 years, and then they bottom out, and they'll be really good for a year, and they'll struggle again because the success isn't sustainable because there's not a model behind it. And so when people ask, how did you win so many games at Wright State? How did you do the things that you were never supposed to do? And what are you going to do at Indiana? Besides removing limitations, besides removing the thought process that we're incapable of doing, like in 2013 when Indiana goes to the World Series, besides saying that that's no longer out of the realm of possibility on an annual or semi-annual basis, we have to build around a model. And so here's the thing. When I first got my job at Wright State, the head coach, I sat down and I asked him, I said, what do you want from a recruiting standpoint? How do you want to build this? What do you want to do? And he said, that's not my job anymore, that's yours. That's your problem to figure out. I said, that's fine, I'll do that, but it's going to look different. And it's going to look different than probably anyone else in college baseball, and certainly in the North. He said, I don't care, as long as we win, you do what you want to do. I said, we'll win, but it's going to be unorthodox by comparison to everybody else. So what I did was this. I broke the game down into purely numbers. And you take away the human element for a moment, and you replace it with just an algorithm. And you said, if 2 teams have 27 outs, if both teams that have 27 outs, the team that maximizes their 27 outs better wins. And that at its base is very simple, but it's very complicated when in practice. And so what we did was we went out and we said, we're going to go recruit the best athletes at every position. And we're going to say, if we can increase defensive radius by 6 to 8 feet on every position player by compared to our opponent, in essence, we would shrink the green space, shrink open space. We would steal 3 to 4 outs a game. We would reduce the number of outs that the opponent would have. And so our catchers had to be defensive first. Our pitchers had to be able to hold the run game. We had to have great athletes all over the field. So we went and just got the best athletes and taught them how to play baseball. And offensively, we were very, very left-handed, mostly because left-handed was just one step closer to first base. And then we stopped sack bunting. We became the preeminent base stealing team in the country. We were stealing 130, 140 bases. And we stopped giving away outs, and we started playing just purely a numbers game. And on its foundation, what I wanted our opponent to play with 24 outs, and I wanted us to play with 30 outs. And no matter what they could do, they couldn't beat us unless they had some outlier game where they hit 3 3-run home runs. That was the only way they could really beat us. And my original hypothesis was if we did that, we would win 75% of our games. And over a 5-year span, we won like 74.7% of our games. So I was only off by like 0.3%, which is not a bad percent when you're a 24-year-old kid making things up. So I was working my way through that. So as we look at when you move here to Indiana, do you say, hey, people often ask me, are you going to do the same thing? Are you going to be able to do this? Yes. You don't have a model and then say, hey, we had a really successful run, I'm going to change everything and flip it upside down. You don't do that. And so we'll carry those ideas forward now. Am I hopeful that we're able to recruit a kid that's a little more polished? Yes. If you saw our first couple weeks of practice at Wright State, you would think I was nuts. Like, guys were it'd be a guy on first base and it'd be a long fly ball in the gap, and he'd go first to third, and then he'd have to cut back to go back to first base. He would cut across the middle of the field. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have to retouch second base. I mean, guys not knowing the basic concepts, but the majority of the position players were all Division I football players, and we just taught them how to play baseball. They didn't know basic concepts, but they were great athletes and they were tough, really, really tough kids. So I'm hopeful that the kids that we can recruit will be a little more baseball savvy, but we'll never deviate from the baseline athleticism. And so you'll see those things. And so what we're going to try to do, not what we're going to try to do, is what we will do is we'll create a professional baseball system in college. It will look very different. So our goals will be, the numbers that we'll work for in our model is we'll say we'll have a 3.0 or below team ERA. We'll field 980 or above. We'll score 7.5 runs a game through an on-base percentage of 400 or above and a 1-to-1 walk-to-strikeout ratio. If you accomplish those numbers, we'll win 40 to 45 games a year. We'll host a regional, host a super regional. You can't outrun those numbers. If you achieve those things, you'll be successful, extremely, extremely, extremely successful. And with the Big Ten's RPI, you'll host a regional, you host a super regional. If you host a regional, you have a 70% chance, it's 66.6, but let's say 70% chance of advancing if you host a regional. If you host a super regional, you have a 70% chance of advancing to a College World Series. So what you have to do is you have to put a system in place to be able to host and then host again. If we accomplish those numbers based on that system, based on that model, then you can sit here and say this. You can say success, therefore, is not a happenstance or a chance or luck, but is the product of a repeatable model. And that's all we try to do, is you try to take it away from hoping and you put it into something that I can do that every single day. So when you go out and recruit and you say, let's get that guy, and I'm like, well, he doesn't fit what we do. Yeah, you're right, he doesn't fit what we do. He's right-handed. The real point of this is I couldn't play for my own system, right? I was right-handed, I was slow, I couldn't play any defense, but I could really hit. Well, I could really hit doesn't necessarily help us when you're going to go play LSU in a super regional in front of 20,000 people, right? So you really have two thought processes when you're going to develop a successful baseball program today in today's age. In today's age, what they try to do is you either win through attrition or you win through player development. So attrition. So right now you have a 35 player roster limit and 27 players can be on scholarship. So the Big Ten, which I think is absolutely correct, the Big Ten puts in place rules that don't allow you to do other conferences do. So the SEC, the ACC, they have different set of rules. They can oversign, they can do a bunch of stuff. So what they do is you say, fine, I'll just bring in 55 players, although the roster limit is 35. I'll bring in 55 players. And there's going to be 20 good players out of those 55. We'll cut the rest. And through attrition, you whittle your way down into having a good team, right? You see it every single year. So you have that, and then you have player development, which is what we've always been the leading. We've always been on the forefront of player development, always in the forefront. All the coaches that I've hired have always been with the idea in mind: is this guy going to be able to coach the players the best, right? So every decision that we make has to come through a prism of player development and then the recruiting into the model that we fit. See, you can either go through attrition or you can go through development. I'm not an attrition guy. I'm a player development guy. So every decision that we make has to go into one of those two, and it has to fit into our model of success. And does that guy fit? Does that player fit what we're doing? As we work our way through, I think you truly can have a program in the Midwest that is a national power, that operates with efficacy, with morality, but also has ultimately the success that we all desire and crave to have here, right? Obviously basketball has done it, and then football continues to improve here. And it is a lot of fun to think about the true upside, and obviously the success that Indiana's had, the winningest Big Ten program over the last 10 years in the World Series and all the accomplishments. So those are the questions that I often get about the vision for IU baseball and where we'll go and how we'll do it. Like I said, I've never been one for open-endedness. I've never been one for like maybes. That's not really ever been my big deal. Like, I'm not sure. We'll just kind of figure it out as we go. I like to have a plan, and I want to know how we're going to do it, and I think everybody else appreciates those things as well. You know, along with the model, I think it's very important for us, like I talked about earlier, to really communicate with our players and talk about how we're going to help them through their personal, their life. And it can be cliched, but I think of it this way. When a mom and a dad or grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle, whoever the caretaker is, drops their child off with you, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. That's the most precious commodity that a family has. And they give you their son and they say, you're in charge, in essence, you're in charge of this young man for the next 3, 4, 5 years, however that works. And so we have an obligation to these young men to help them do the things that they want to do in the rest of their lives. And so we talk a lot. I spend a lot of time talking about it. And I really think there's 3 main concepts that we want to communicate to our players. By the time they leave, I want to make sure that they have a grasp of those things. And if they don't choose to live by them, it's your fault, because I told you. And we worked on it a lot. So the first thing being is how you do some things is how you do everything. How you do some things is how you do everything. I get asked a lot. People ask me, how did you become the youngest head coach in the country? How have you had a lot of success? First of all, I had a lot of help, right? There was a lot of good coaches. My dad was a coach, and I had a lot of help. And Justin Parker, who's at Indiana with us, maybe one of the top 5 coaches in the country, terrific help. But I tell people this, and I truly mean this. How did I become such a successful young head coach? And it's because I did the laundry really, really well. And it's because when somebody asked me to order the sandwiches, I ordered the sandwiches the right way. And when someone asked me to sweep the floor, I swept the floor like that was the most important thing I possibly could do. And nobody likes that answer, especially when you're like 19 and you want like the cheat code. There is no cheat code. It's how you choose to do everything. Because when you're in charge, so I'm the head coach, right? And so whenever one of our young assistants or a young player, he wants all the glitz and the glam. He wants to be the recruiting guy. He wants all the big decisions to be made. You have to earn the right to make big decisions. You have to earn the right to be in charge. You have to go through and prove that you are capable of working in those environments. And so when I was a volunteer making $5,000 a year, and my soon-to-be wife was, I'm sure, thinking, what in the world am I doing marrying this broke kid? All I could think about was if I did the most tedious job, the best that I could do, maybe my head coach would give me a job that didn't suck so bad. And then I would get a job that was a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more about what I liked. And in the meantime, I worked while I waited. I worked really, really hard while I waited. I was working with I'm our hitting coach now. I think one of the worst things you can do as a head coach is stop doing what got you there. So I still coach the hitters, I coach the outfitters, we had a recruiting meeting this morning, and all those things. But one of the hitters said, "Merce, you're a genius with hitting." And I said, "I appreciate that, it's very kind of you. But I want you to think about this. I've studied 2 things for the last 15 years of my life. 2 things. I studied them. Deer hunting and baseball. And that's it. I can't tie a tie. I literally can't tie a tie. My clothes don't match. I wear 1 pair of shoes. Like I don't do anything except for these 2 things. And so if you spent 15 years studying this one thing and becoming the best that you can be at this one thing, can you imagine how powerful you would be in this one area?" And he said, "That's a really good point." And my point to him was, narrow your focus a little bit and focus on what the things that you really need to be working on, and you'll be able to be much more successful. The second thing is, you can have anything if you're willing to do the work. You can have anything. You can literally have anything. I believed my way into being the head coach at Indiana, which still stuns me when I say that out loud to everybody else. But you can have anything you want if you're willing to do the work. It's just a question is, are we really willing to do the work? Are we truly willing to do what it takes to have what we want? Are we willing to sacrifice what we have to sacrifice? And it's not just like my social life. Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's your friends. Is it worth sacrificing what you have to sacrifice to be where you want to be or to have what you want to have? That's the great question in coaching. It's a great question in professional sports. Are you willing to sacrifice what you have to have or what you have to give to do it? I tell guys, if it matters enough, you'll find a way. We're big into diet and nutrition. We're big into lifestyle decisions. And the first practice, the first day, the first meeting, everyone's like, I want to do that, I want to do that. And it comes like, that's fine, no alcohol, no simple carbs, no saturated fat, no sugar, no carbonation, get 8 hours of sleep at night, all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I mean, I just kind of want like I said, I want the cheat code. Do you have like a magic pill I can take and be that way? It's like, no, that's what you have to give. Are you willing to take it or not? I joke, but I say, Shaquem Griffin. Do you know who Shaquem Griffin is? Shaquem Griffin? Shaquem Griffin was a linebacker for Central Florida last year. He didn't get invited to the NFL Combine because he has one hand. He's got one hand. He's got, just below the elbow is one hand. So I tell our players, somebody was complaining last year, I said, bro, Shaquem Griffin has one hand, and you can't get here on time. This cat went to the NFL Combine and repped out 225 on the bench press 22 times with one hand. He's now starting linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. I said, hey, bro, and you can't lay a bunt down? This guy's got one hand. And he didn't like that too much. But he took it. Now along with that, I tell guys, just remember, no matter how good you are, you can always be replaced. I have that in my office because if I don't do my job, Fred Glass, as nice as he's been, and he's wonderful, he will fire me, just like he'll fire anybody else, just like your bosses will do the same, or actually, maybe you're the boss. And the last thing I tell guys, life's a matter of choices. No matter where we are, good or bad in our life, ultimately it's because of choices that we make. 95% of the time where we are in our life is the choices that we make, whether it's good or bad. I know there's some circumstances that aren't always great, but we can't be a victim. We can't go through life believing that we're a victim, that everyone's always out to get us, that there's something going against us. We have got to believe that our choices matter and where we end up ultimately in our life. Lou Holtz, I'll leave you with the last quote. Lou Holtz talked about complaining about your problems. He said, 80% of the people that you're telling your problems to don't care. And the other 20% are glad that you got the problems you have. So when you tell them like that, they live somewhat better. But I'll certainly open it up for any questions that you may have, but I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to be here. Yes.
So I love the game that you described, speed and defense. I have two questions. One is, so many young pitchers are pitching harder and harder and harder. I've seen more Tommy John and cases like 17 surgery. What are you doing to work through that? And my other question is that there's so few African American players in the game right now. How can you as a coach? Is that something that you're concerned with and can you improve?
Sure. The Tommy John is mostly there's a couple issues, right? The human body is only meant to go so fast, and so we've pushed the limits of what our body can really realistically do. The second thing is the posterior chain. The decelerators are underdeveloped in most youth, so we developed the front side, and the front side more of the engine. The backside being obviously the decelerator, and so we're not developing the backside enough, and so that's the ligament that has all the damage to it on slowing it down when the post change doesn't work properly. So the Tommy John's only going to get worse because we're only going to throw harder, and it's just hard. And so you get them into your program, and then you can develop them physically, and it's a conundrum because the guys that have electricity that throw hard, that they blow out, but you have to recruit the guys that throw hard. And so it sounds bad, but Tommy John now is almost like a pulled hamstring. It's like he's going to pop, you got to move forward. As for the minorities in baseball, that's a very multi-layered issue, to be honest, right? You look at, I met with a guy this past weekend. They're putting like an RBI program that's in Chicago, has a lot of success. There's one in Cincinnati. One of my good friends runs that program. They're putting one in Indianapolis. It really is a financial and is a space issue. Well, in baseball, if you're going to say maybe in the city, in the inner city area, you're looking at the space for a baseball field, the finances for a baseball field, or baseball equipment. Baseballs are $7 a baseball. If it gets wet, it's ruined. You're looking at bats, $300, the gloves, $300. There's just so much more involved that goes into it. And baseball is a slower paced game. The issue being that there just aren't as many minority athletes playing baseball. And so I go out and recruit, and the truth of it is that there aren't that many that are playing. And I think from what I'm hearing from my friends that are running the organizations, that's their sticking point. That's what they tell me from my guys in the RBI program. So I do think that baseball is a very diverse game at its foundation. We have kids from Canada and Florida and New Jersey and from the West Coast, from literally everywhere. And so there is a lot of diversity, but in that faction, I do understand that. I do get that question some, and I ask our guys that, my friends in those things, and that's what they relay to me. So, yes.
IU, as Fred Glass says, is the most southern university in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. So that should be a good recruiting tool. The problem is, when Bob Morgan was here, he did as well as he could with facilities. Mm-hmm. Tracy Smith came in for a few years, took the team to the College World Series, and then was lured away to Arizona State. Your predecessor was lured away to Mississippi State. Big Ten doesn't have longevity in coaches except for Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So looking down the road, 5 years from now, what's it going to take to keep you here and to have the recruits trust that you will stay here?
Well, so yesterday I packed up a 26-foot U-Haul and I drove it to my parents' house last night. My parents live 20 minutes down the road. We're finalizing purchasing my parents' property and remodeling and building their house. So if I'm going to spend that kind of money and I'm going to move in next door to my parents with a 4-month-old grandchild, their first grandchild, I would say that would be my statement would be like, I plan to be here as long as the great Fred Glass would have me here. So I was born and raised here. This is where I wanted to be. This is all I've ever wanted to do. And I plan to be here, absolutely.
I have a little guy who plays baseball in town. He loves coming on the field after the games, and so just having him in my program and let the kids sign the autographs, but the great thrill it is to them. So that's just one comment. And then my second one is softball to you. What's your favorite baseball movie? And then what's the second part of what's your favorite baseball part? You can have one that just has a special place in your heart, other than baseball.
Sure. My favorite baseball, I love The Natural. I love Robert Redford. I think he's so good in that movie. And there's a lot of like, I love the nostalgia. I love the history of baseball. I love so many of those things. So that'd be my favorite movie. My favorite ballpark. I've been to Wrigley once. I thought that was pretty cool. My grandfather grew up in Indianapolis, and he was a big-time Cubs fan. So the majority of my childhood memories in baseball are sitting there with my grandfather watching the Cubs play and listen to him yell at the TV about why the Cubs can't win. And if he could have only lived a few years longer, he would have been the happiest guy on earth. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for coming today.
Absolutely.
Lauren has been very excited about your coming in dreams. That you didn't come under duress.
No, I was very excited. I was very happy to be here.
My reason for asking that is that we've had some difficulty recently in situations where people were being interviewed of being able to recall things from their teenage years. I wondered if you had anything you recall about Lauren.
No.
All right, it's time to go.
No. This one time, no, I'm kidding. No, Lauren is he's the real McCoy. He's the same guy now that he was in high school. He's the same guy all the way through. He's been a great guy for as long as I've ever known him, which has been, like he said, since Little League. So there's no skeleton in the closet. At least not that I'm aware of. I'm not the guy to get that, but no, he's terrific. He's been great. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, and as is our custom, when we have a speaker at each weekly meeting, we make a contribution in your name and being here today. And this quarter, we're making contributions to the Interfaith Winter Shelter here in town, so we'll be doing that for you. Our next week's program is Dr. Christopher and Sarah Lubinsky, is that right, Tim? And they're from the School of Education at IU. We'll be back here at St. Mark's. The greeters, Dave Meyer. Pledge and Reflection, Tim Jessen. Introduction of guests, Sarah Laughlin. And Roundabout Reporter will be Jim Capshew. Thought for the week is, art is not what you see, but what you make others see, by Edward Degas. And I felt like I had to have a tie-in with the Coach Mercer that I remember, which is his father. And a quote that he said, as we are getting out of here, maybe a minute late, but a quote that he had told us one day in right field when somebody showed up late, and we were running sprints before a game. He said, to be early is to be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be forgotten. That was from Coach Mercer Sr., and I always keep that and hold that true. So let's all rise and say the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it be goodwill and better friendship? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? Ding. Yeah, Coach.